Pippin was the only penguin in Mawson Cove who refused to stand on ice floes taller than 2 fish stacked end to end. Other adleys roosted on craggy ledges, but Pippin's legs went noodly whenever he looked down. A quick peek over the edge and the glacier seemed to rear up into the sky, while his stomach performed somersaults nobody had taught it. The colony long ago concluded that he suffered from the unthinkable, a penguin with vertigo, as improbable as a snowstorm at the equator. His nickname became Grounded Pip. Yet every afternoon, he waddled far from the rookery to a makeshift viewing perch, where the ice sheet sloped gently toward the sea. There, through a battered brass spyglass stolen from an abandoned research hut, he watched rockets blaze away from the human Antarctic launch initiative, a shoestring operation of engineers who apparently believed the cosmos was reachable with repurposed weather balloons, bargain bin boosters, and more duct tape than sense. Each launch rattled the horizon with a raucous clap, and the ascending flame painted Pippin's eyes with fiery awe. Vertigo beherent, he wanted to go up there. The notion was ridiculous, and that alone pleased him. A flightless bird who got dizzy from simple elevation, aspiring to orbit, was so far-fetched that it wrapped back around to plausibility. Surely the universe enjoyed a good joke. He began to sneak into HAS's open-air junkyard at night, scavenging for discarded training manuals, cracked helmets, and half-empty tubes of freeze-dried peanut butter. Instead of counting krill to fall asleep, he now recited Newton's laws in broken squawks. One dawn, glaciologist-turned-launch director Dr. Farah Nistrom caught him rummaging through a bin of misprinted mission patches. The scientist adjusted her fogged goggles, processed the sight of a 4-kilogram seabird cradling a checklist, and said, with more curiosity than alarm, "Looking for anything in particular, little fella?" Pippin straightened his posture and slapped the clipboard with flippers for emphasis. Nystrom knelt, read the block letters scrawled in charcoal. Application for interspecies astronaut candidacy. The signature was a lopsided set of claw marks. The launch director tilted her head. "I see. And why exactly should we consider you?" He gestured skyward. The measure of conviction in that simple motion, bolstered by a series of emphatic chirps, was weirdly persuasive. Nystrom had seen interns with weakened resumes. Besides, HAOI desperately needed positive publicity after last month's unplanned rapid disassembly of a booster that splintered the snowfield like a bowling ball through porcelain. A penguin's astronaut? Headlines guaranteed. Grants might follow. "Fine," she sighed. "But training starts at 0700. Hope you've got a stomach for centrifugal chairs." Pippin did not, but he showed up anyway, helmet modified with a cutout for his beak, suit stitched from child-size EVA overalls. The other recruits, 3 grad students, a janitor from the logistics bay, and an enthusiastic garden gnome named Lars, who was technically a mission mascot, eyed him with disbelief until he hopped onto the treadmill and ran an entire mile at a blistering waddle. Dignified was another matter. The harness squeaked like wheezy bagpipes, and every few seconds he flailed to keep balance. Yet he finished, faint but triumphant. Physical conditioning was only the first hurdle. The real nemesis emerged during vestibular training in the Spinatron 5000, a carnival ride retrofitted into a makeshift centrifuge. Recruits were strapped inside steel cups, the platform whirred, tilting and revolving, until anyone less than iron-stomached surrendered lunch. Pippin lasted 10 seconds before his vision turned into kaleidoscopic mush and he flopped over in a trembling heap. Nystrom recorded the result, lips pursed. Vertigo index catastrophic. Embarrassed but stubborn, Pippin sought advice from the one bird in Antarctica who routinely defied everything penguins believe about gravity, an albatross named Captain Spindrift, who ran aerial displays for tourist cruise ships. They met on a cracked slab overlooking the churning Ross Sea. Pippin explained his predicament between burps. "Sounds like your inner ear's throwing mutiny," Spindrift said. "When I hit turbulent thermals, I fix on the horizon, breathe behind my beak, and imagine I'm water flowing downhill." "I'm literally waterfowl," Pippin protested. "Exactly," the albatross winked. "Lean into it." For weeks, Pippin practiced. He spun in tight circles on the ice until dizziness whispered, but didn't conquer. He invented a game called Swish and Slide, where he'd toboggan across smooth snow while rotating progressively faster, eyes locked on a distant flag. Whenever panic threatened, he pictured himself a ribbon of meltwater snaking to sea. Slowly, something rewired inside. The seasick nausea subsided to livable wobble. When he reported back to the Spinatron, he endured 30 seconds, then a full minute, emerging shaky but upright. Nystream updated her notes. Vertigo index improving. Remarkable stubbornness. The next obstacle was academic. Reacting thrusters, orbital mechanics, life support redundancies, none of it came naturally to a bird whose previous engineering feat was balancing an anchovy on his bill. HALI's shoestring budget lacked proper instructors, so lessons were administered by Professor Edratron, a holographic orangutan pre-programmed for after-school science fairs. The glitchy avatar lectured in rhyme. Escape velocity's quite the trick, slash reach 11.2, and you're cosmic quick. Half the recruits quit within days. Pippin stayed, jotting formulas with charcoal stubs between webbed toes. Rhyme or no rhyme, he understood momentum. He practiced it daily, sliding across ice. At last, 9 months after Pippin's clandestine application, HALI announced its inaugural avian inclusive mission, Budge 1, birds undertaking daring galactic grabs. Destination, low Earth orbit. The craft consisted of an old Soyuz re-entry capsule bolted to a second-hand service module and a humble experimental cargo hold, shaped suspiciously like a shipping container. The docking adapter was duct-taped to match. Its call sign was the Tin Beak. Crew roster: Commander Nystrom, Systems Engineer Rajiv Patel, Flight Technician Myra Schroeder, Publicity Specialist Lars the Gnome, Non-Sentient Cargo, and Payload Navigator Pippin. A penguin with vertigo, now more or less under control, would be first flightless bird in space. Launch morning was an Antarctic sunrise glinting orange across knife-sharp ridges. Pippin waddled into the gantry elevator, heart hammering, while technicians double-checked the custom seat shaped like a bucket so his tail wouldn't cramp. At T-3 voices crackled through loudspeakers. A gentle tremor thudded up the rocket's skeleton, drums of destiny or imminent disaster. Pippin clasped the small pebble Spindrift had given for luck. 9, 8. He sucked one long, horizon-imagining breath. 7, 6. Flow like water. 5, 4, 3. The booster sledgehammered downward. Gravity shoved him into foam padding. Outside, day became a roaring torch. For humans, ascent lasted 8 minutes. For Pippin, it lasted a lifetime, plucked and roasted. The G-forces pinned his flippers while the vertebrae in his neck squealed. At max Q, he felt nauseous memory threatened, but he fixed on Nystrom's helmeted profile and imagined a distant iceberg horizon glowing steady. The vibrations mellowed in thin air, and before his stomach recalibrated, weight drained away like bathwater. A single pin floated free, pirouetting. They had made orbit. Zero-gravity acclimatization revealed the crew's next nemesis: hiccups. Something about the recycled air mixture and canister pressure induced violent spasms in mammals and birds alike. The moment Pippin loosened his straps, an intestinal bubble climbed and popped. Hup! His body jerked downward, knocking his helmet visor into a control panel. Commander Nystrom, similarly afflicted, bounced off the opposite wall. Hup! At first this was comedy. Then one hiccup triggered the emergency thruster toggle, another yanked a coolant line, still another flung a freeze-dried lasagna brick into the guidance computer, forcing manual override. The Tin Beak became a pinball machine of misfiring appendages. Hiccups might scuttle the mission before any legitimate science could occur. In the minimalistic galley, Patel cradled his ribs. We need a remedy spoonful of sugar, upside-down water chug, anything. Hup, Nystrom answered. Pippin considered his own physiology. His diaphragm spasmed like a rubber band. On Earth, he'd belly slide to smooth the jitter, letting ground friction dampen contraction. In microgravity, there was no ground unless he invented one. That night, while others tried holding breath or counting prime numbers, Pippin retreated to the cargo hold with an engineering tablet. The hold stored a pair of test jetpacks, compact nitrogen thrusters, designed for exterior hole excursions. Notably, they were rated for non-standard body shapes subject to center of mass recalibration. Perfect. He spent hours attaching Velcro straps, shortening nozzle manifolds, and rewiring bite slips so a beak could actuate burst pulses. He sketched routines on the tablet, short downward jets to mimic the push of a belly slide, alternating side bursts paired with mid-air flipper flaps to recreate waddling inertia. Finishing flourish, a spin that used Vertigo's Ghost as centrifugal ally. At 400 ship time, Pippin summoned crew to the hold. They arrived groggy, still hiccuping. "Trust me," flashed across his translation tablet. Flipper typing had improved. He donned the prototype pack, clipped boots into magnetic shoes that skimmed the deck without fully locking, and initiated Waddle mode. A gentle downward puff pushed his torso upward. In reaction, hiccup impulse softened. Two sequential side bursts rocked him, left, right. Visual substitute for the brain's expectation of footfall impact. His diaphragm, deceived by faux gravity and rhythmic motion, settled. No hiccup. Instead, he executed a flourish. Full rotation, controlled by opposing thrusters, ending with a theatrical bow. The pack beeped. Routine complete. Commander Nistrum stared, eyes wide behind helmet bubble. Are you cured?" Pippin offered a deliberate silence. The hiccup monster never returned. Patel, desperate, strapped into the spare. His first attempt veered him into a wall, but Pippin flapped corrective instructions. Soon everyone practiced the slapstick jetpack waddle, named because the deck speakers played ragtime as accompaniment, salvaged from Lars the Gnome's entertainment drive. Each waddle routine lasted 40 seconds, enough to recalibrate diaphragms. Within 2 hours, the cruise ship chorus of "Hup" had quieted to an occasional burp. Science could proceed. They performed orbital surveys of ice shelf disintegration, deployed nanosatellites the size of soda cans, and recorded the first interspecies duet in microgravity Nystrom on harmonica and Pippin on beak percussion, streamed live to millions. Funding pledges poured in. The budget space program suddenly looked visionary instead of laughable. Day 4 crisis. A micrometeoroid no larger than a walnut pierced the cargo container, shredding coolant pipes feeding the avionics bay. Pressure sensors screamed, temperature soared. If circuitry overheated, guidance would fail, and their safe reentry trajectory would degrade into a lethal ballistic reentry too steep for the capsule's brittle ablative shield. Patel sealed interior hatches, but the repair must be outside spacewalk. Unfortunately, Nistrom's suit coolant pump had jammed during launch vibrations, and Patel himself was nauseated again after gulping reconstituted chili. Only one crew member remained fully fit, with bodies small enough to crawl behind coolant manifolds and, thanks to custom jetpack skill, adept at fine maneuver thruster control. Flight technician Schroeder looked at Pippin and gulped. "You up for this, bird?" Vertigo flickered inside him like distant lightning. Exterior vistas promised infinity. One mispulse, and he'd tumble into endless night. He clutched Spindrift's pebble-through glove lining, reminding himself horizons exist even in vacuum. Stars themselves are horizons, fixed points to flow toward. Suiting Pippin took creativity. They squeezed him into a trim child-sized extravehicular suit, helmet replaced with transparent polymer dome big enough for his neck swivel. The jetpack replaced the standard safer unit. Its paddling waddle routine doubled as micro-thrust reorienter. Tethers twined around his ankle joint, modified clasp to fit a flipper. The airlock hissed. He drifted out, feet brushing hatch lip. Darkness yawned, except where Antarctic ice thousands of kilometers beneath glowed moonlit. The planet appeared in enormous marble, etched with swirling white familiar yet surreal. A hiccup of fear tickled, but he triggered a quick waddle burst. Left, right, down. The faux footfall steadied him. He located the breach, silver gash venting coolant crystals like diamond snow. He anchored with magnetic boots to the hull, removed a patch kit from thigh pocket, but the angle was awkward. His center of mass was too low, reach too short. Attempt failed, patch floated away. He'd have to spin inverted, belly facing black sky. Vertigo snickered. He gulped, but initiated slapstick maneuver 3, flip and slide. A sharp dual thruster pop pitched him 180 degrees. Now, upside down relative to Hall, however one defined orientation in orbit, he could access the pipe. Handholds were scarce. He inserted a gloved flipper into the jagged seam for leverage. Coolant fog sprayed across visor. Temperature plummeted, but suit heaters compensated. He applied putty, pressed polymer sheet, activated curing laser for 10 seconds. Frosty crack sizzled shut. Telemetry inside the cabin confirmed pressure equalization. Electronics cooled, but in shifting weight, he'd loosened tether knot. A final laser pulse jerked him backward. The tether slipped off ankle ring released. Momentum drifted him centimeters at first. Centimeters that became meters. He flailed for Hall but missed. The planet's limb swung into view, horizonless abyss beneath. His stomach somersaulted. The old vertigo roared awake. "Tin Beak! I've lost anchor," he broadcast, voice squeaky through translator. Panic static crackled. "Stay calm," Nystrom urged. "You have the pack." Except jetpack fuel gauge read 25%, insufficient for prolonged chase. He could attempt impulse burst to return, but each miscalibration risked overshoot. Patience and geometry. He first spun to face the hull, locating reflective tape stripes marking airlock. He needed to flow like water along an invisible curving current, a parabolic velocity vector. So he conjured a mental river as spindrift taught. Stars became riverbanks, Earth the distant sea. He timed breath with diaphragm, control against vertigo, and pulse right thruster short, left thruster longer, downward thruster tap. Each waddle step lined him with the ship's orbit path, killing relative drift. 10 meters. 8. He clipped spare safety carabiner to suit ring. 5. He angled 15 degrees, used remaining thrust in a final slapstick shuffle, an absurd dance in silence, and slammed magnet boot onto hull. Clang. Secure. Inside there were cheers, mixed with relieved sobs. Patel even high-fived Lars the gnome. Pippin sealed the airlock behind him, temperature rising again to comfortable. Hiccups? Not a single squeak. Mission controllers back on ice cheered too, the feed broadcast worldwide. A video montage of Pippin's spacewalk overlaid with ragtime went viral under the caption, "Waddle of Fame." Donations surged. The budget space program proclaimed solvency for at least 2 more fiscal years. Re-entry day arrived under auroral curtains rippling green. The capsule detached from service module. Pippin nestled into his bucket seat, clutching the G-forces rejoined like old friends, but now they felt less like adversaries, more like stern teachers. Plasma flared. Hull rattled. He fixed on Earth's horizon, a curved line of dawn. Flow. Water. Forward. Splashdown occurred in the Southern Ocean, retrieval by icebreaker. Reporters lined the deck, clamoring for heroic quotes. Commander Nystrom addressed them. "History will remember we stood on the shoulders of giants, and one small penguin," she gestured. Pippin waddled up the gangplank, shaky but proud, to thunderous applause, flashbulbs, and the distant caw of gulls. A journalist asked through a boom mic, "Pippin, what's next after conquering vertigo and space?" He tapped his translator, typed, and held the screen. "Build a moon colony." W/big slide. The deck erupted in laughter, but that night, under a sky smeared with stars, he returned to the overlook where it began. Rockets still roared from HALI pads, only now their tails felt like old, flaming friends. Pippin climbed, not waddled, onto a tall ice hummock previously avoided. He looked down, dizzy, yes a little, but vertigo transformed to a fluttery thrill indistinguishable from hope. Above him the cosmos stretched, horizonless, welcoming. A flightless bird had flown without wings. In the end, that was the universe's favorite punchline, and Pippin was already rehearsing new slapstick steps for a place with 1/6 gravity. After all, the moon offered plenty of room to waddle.